Hi everyone, welcome back. By now, you should have done some field research, created some personas, reframed the challenge from the lens of your user, and met with your team to come up with some potential ideas. In this video, we shall be discussing how might we design and test our solutions. We are once again shifting gears from divergent thinking. From the ideation phase, we try to create as many ideas as we can. And now we are shifting gears towards convergence, right? To create prototypes and to test and to find out what truly works for the people that we're trying to design for. Remember that nothing stops us from going back to the empathy phase or to redefine our design challenge. So at any point in time, you realize that there's some pieces of information that are missing. There's some things that perhaps could be better defined in order to create more impact for people we're trying to design for. Then feel free to go ahead and do that, right? So as we prototype, we'll always discover more things about our users. So I hope that by now you should have met with your teams to generate some ideas and concepts. If you have not, or you need a little bit more nudging to come up with more ideas, I would just like to talk about this a little bit more. First of all is to go back to your research, your insights, and opportunity statements that you have written. So I think that is the research that you should have done that will be able to inform the context that your users are in, and with that, be able to create impactful solutions. So go back to your research, go back to the insights you have found. The ideas that you have created should resonate with some of these things that you have found. Sometimes when we're asked to create new ideas and new solutions, we get a bit worried, we get a bit too stressed that maybe this new concept should be entirely new and never heard of before. I feel that sometimes an unnecessary stress. We can always look back to solutions that already exist and ask how can it be done better or differently in order to create more impact for the people that we have today. So things like RateMart, Amazon services, even Grab, these are not new solutions of this day and age. They are something that has been done in the past, except that we just made it a little bit better for the people today. In the first video, we talked about doing desk research, and part of that is to look for local and international case studies of how things have been done elsewhere. Look a bit broader. Don't just look within the domain that you're trying to study and trying to improve. If you look further, sometimes you might find some things that are interesting that can also be then applied in our case. Just to share a few examples over here could be how some researchers looked at combating malnutrition in Vietnam post the Vietnam War. So these researchers, they realized that there's a high case of malnutrition in the villages. So they went in and take a look at what's happening. And sure enough, yes, there's a lot of families that were not doing so well. But amongst this population, there were a few that seemed to be doing better than the others. So they are looking for what we call positive deviance. So what they found out that these families, what they were doing that was different was that they were taking the water from a certain paddy field. And from this paddy field in the water, there were little shrimps that were living in the paddy field. And because of that, the children was getting enough proteins in order to develop a bit better than the others. So what they did then was to propagate what this family has been doing to the others in the community. So we can do the same thing within the community that we're trying to design for, trying to look out for some people that are perhaps doing better than the others and try to learn what was the secret sauce. Are we able to learn something from them and try to apply that to the larger population? Another example, a more local one, a local company called TicTac was trying to train their AI algorithm. Rather than hiring people to do this, they created an app, and with that app, they created micro jobs. The whole intent was then to help people who are unable to go out and about, perhaps seniors that prefer to be at home, or persons with disability, right? And using these people to help to train their AI algorithm, killing two birds with one stone. Something interesting that perhaps you can learn from. How can we create micro jobs and also try to train AI models in this case? Another local example is Good Life Makan. So they looked at applying asset-based community development. What they did was they went into the community and understand what are some of the assets within this community. They realized that this group of people, they love to cook and they love to share what they are cooking. So they enlisted the help of these citizens to run the kitchen, from organizing themselves in terms of buying the food, deciding what to cook, preparing and cleaning up. And with this, then they can share with the broader community how to cook, teaching people how to cook and getting people in to join them and having a meal together. Right. Think about what we talked about earlier in the first video as well about asset mapping, community asset mapping. And with that, how might we leverage on some of the assets that we have in the community? Sometimes we hear about participants saying that, oh, I'm just not the creative kind. I'm not good at coming up with new ideas. I truly believe that creativity is just about connecting dots. Dots meaning different pieces of information, experiences, viewpoints, your understanding of the challenge. By connecting these dots together, help us to create new ideas that perhaps no one has ever solution for. So be a dot collector, go out there to understand more about the challenge, speaking to users, to read more widely, to see what other people are doing. And with that, I believe that all of us can be creative. So with this, I'd like to move on to the next section, talking about designing and testing our solutions. So from now until 14th of April, or at least this is a recommended time for the teams to create your prototypes and bring your prototypes out and test it with real users to get stakeholders. And through their feedbacks, hopefully you'll get new insights in order to iterate your solutions to make it more impactful. I'd like to quickly share a video on rapid prototyping. And after this, we'll talk more about different prototyping methods.
My name is Tom Chi. I spent 2 years of my life building the user experience team for the Google X division of Google. And it's a place I affectionately called the Department of Science Fiction because of the futuristic nature of the types of projects we took on. Self-driving cars, Google Glass, and other things that you'll see soon enough. So for those who haven't heard of this project, this is what Google Glass looks like. It allows you to overlay digital things into your eyesight while still maintaining being part of a world. So if I were to pull out my cell phone and look into it, I'm basically out of this world now. Like I'm in my own little cell phone, tablet world, what have you. But Google Glass has the vision of allowing us to continue to be in the world, but also have access to the digital things that we need and we love. Now, I'm going to ask you a really simple question about Google Glass. How would you prototype this experience? How long do you think it would take you to make the first working version of a heads-up display? Okay, a little bit on the long side. The answer is 1 day. And here's what it looked like. So basically, the magic piece is the coat hanger. The coat hanger, I bent it in a specific shape, and the top loop goes around your neck, and then the bottom loop rests against your chest. And it allows me to carry a piece of plexiglass on which a little sheet protector. So these are the things that you put your book reports in so they don't get wet. I literally got it at the drugstore. Have it out at the end of the plexiglass, and then it gets projected onto with the Piker projector that's connected to a netbook. And using this setup, within 1 day, we were already able to start having the experience of what it looks like to have digital things overlaid on your physical world, be able to move around with it, and also use the netbook to try out tons and tons of different ideas around software. Now, after you start getting something like that working, a really important problem comes up. Like, you're wearing this thing on your head. It's like a pair of glasses. So you don't have a mouse or a keyboard or a touch screen, all the ways that you're used to interacting with a machine. So we thought for a second, well, maybe we could do something like what was shown in Minority Report. So for folks who haven't seen that, basically Tom Cruise is manipulating software with his hands in front of his face, and photos are flying over here, and his emails over here, and so on and so forth. So that's the same question again. How long do you think it would take to have the real experience of doing something like that? 2 years. 2 years, okay. Somebody said one day, 45 minutes. So here's how it looks. So you wear the thing that we saw the first time because you need some way to go project things. But what happens is we got 2 hairbands, which I think was the hardest part. We had to go ask people for their hairbands. But you put one hand in each hairband, and attached to that hairband, we tied a fishing line. And the fishing line goes over the top of a whiteboard and then goes down to this little assembly that's taped to the floor. And what this means is every time I move my hand in any direction, it adds tension to the line, and it does the following with the assembly on the floor. So the other end of the fishing wire is attached to a chopstick. And it's not because I'm Asian. There's just a cafeteria nearby. I don't just carry chopsticks on me. But I tied it to the end of a chopstick. I clipped it into a binder clip and then put it over a pen. And basically what happens then is when you move your arm and it produces tension on the wire, chopstick comes down like a lever and clicks a presentation clicker. One hand moves the presentation forward, the other hand moves the presentation backwards. So this was built in 45 minutes, and that meant shortly afterwards, we were having experiences like looking at an image gallery and saying, next image, previous image, or looking at our emails and saying, let me click into this email, let me click reply now. And this was exactly the experience of what it was like to go control software with your hands. And ultimately, what it taught us is we probably shouldn't have this in the product. We learned a lot of things about the social awkwardness of it and some of the ergonomic aspects of it that you couldn't have figured out ahead of just thinking about it. And ergo, the second prototyping rule, which is doing is the best kind of thinking. They teach you to think a lot in school, but I think it's a little bit overrated. Now, last example, actually, Google's not the first team that's tried to go make something like this. If you search for heads-up display, you get tons of images of teams that have built various systems like this. But I can tell you at a glance that none of these pieces of hardware are comfortable to wear for more than 15 minutes, except for maybe the helmet over there. But then you got to wear a helmet. So how would you go figure out a way to go wear something like this comfortably? The answer is really basic materials. Modeling wire, paper, clay, and using something like this is able to make something that looked like a pair of glasses really quickly. I cut out pieces of clay that weighed exactly the same amount as the electronic components that we were talking about putting on the device, wrapped it in paper so you didn't get clay on your face, and then taped it to the modeling wire in various places to go experiment with how a pair of glasses could fit on you. And we discovered something really important then. If you look at this drawing on the bottom, it turns out that the weight of a pair of glasses is actually mostly perceived through how much weight is on your nose. And it also turns out that your ears can carry a lot more weight than your nose, and that's a totally different experiment. You could ask me about that. But because of that fact, if you put weight behind your ears, it allows your ear to go act like the fulcrum of a lever, and it then takes weight off of your nose on the front. And actually, you guys can try this now. Anybody with glasses, if you push very gently on the back of your glasses, you'll find actually your glasses feel tremendously lighter. Now, this meant that we not only discovered something interesting about how to go, that's useful for developing a device like this, we actually discovered something pretty fundamental that had never been discovered about glasses, period. So if you have really heavy glasses, you can do this and you will be more comfortable. Now, the last point I want to make is about 2 types of learning. Because through the process of rapid prototyping, you're able to learn very, very quickly. But it's a very specific type of learning. The type of learning that you usually learn in school, I call book learning. It comes from what humanity already knows, and it's a necessary foundation for you guys to go explore the world. But there's a totally different type of learning, which I call expansive learning. And this is the learning that you do on behalf of humanity. Right? You are creating something new, you are expanding into the possibilities, and you're building that sphere of human knowledge in that process. And we think about these things, and as soon as you hear, okay, the infinite realm of possibilities beyond the sphere of human knowledge, you might be thinking, well, there's the scientists at the Large Hadron Collider and who have these amazing instruments. That's their job, right? But the truth is that this action is available to all of us. It's not just for the scientist, it's also for the poet or the songwriter that expresses an emotion for the first time in a unique way. It's also for the person that has an amazing business idea that they're certain can help millions of lives. And it's the realm of using paper, clay, and tape in order to go find a new insight in an ancient technology. So now that you guys know a lot about rapid prototyping, I'm excited to see what you'll do with it. Thank you.
So I like how he put it that all of us can contribute to expansive learning, to learn and bring something new to mankind that has not been done before. So just to reiterate the points a little bit more, so why do we want to prototype? Is because we want to explore. Prototyping is thinking in motion. Whereas we are prototyping something, we start to learn which are the features, which are the aspects of our solution that we need to pay more attention to, and how do we then get users to use the product or service that we're trying to design. And yeah, so with that, as we prototype, we get to learn more about the solution that we're trying to implement, and we'll be able to do it better through iteration. Prototyping is also about communication, right? So in class, in a physical class, we like to get people to build a Lego duck out of 6 pieces of Lego. You'll be surprised how many different variations of duck you can build with just 6 pieces of Lego. So if that's something so simple like a duck, what more would it be if you're talking about a service or a complex solution that you're thinking of, right? So only through prototyping are we able to, as we build it, as we communicate with one another as we're building it, will we as a team have a same understanding of what this solution is all about. And with the prototype that we create, we are able to then share that with other people, let them experience what we are trying to create, and through that deliver and communicate more effectively on what's the solution all about. And of course, prototyping is about evaluation. In design, we talk about design critique. So when you've designed something, we always go back to validate whether if this is something that's useful, if it's something that's effective, does it really meet the outcomes that we want to see? So we want this kind of evaluation that is not based on our own personal assumptions. We want evaluation that is based and grounded in reality. So by creating prototypes, we'll be able to walk out the door, bring the prototype to someone, bring the prototype to a user or a test or a stakeholder, and get feedbacks as early as possible to test our concepts and to test the usability. I'll talk more about this in the next slide. So through iterations of prototyping, it brings us from exploring what are the possible solutions that are out there and towards evaluating what are some of the features of our solutions that we should keep, what are some of the features that should be improved, and move us closer and closer towards a matured solution that can be implemented in the community. Yeah, so through prototyping, you'll be constantly going through that divergent, convergent thinking over here. Once you tested a prototype, you realize, hey, it doesn't quite work. We might want to then take 2 steps back to ideate how else can we do this better, and then bring it out there to test again and go back into convergence. Okay, so in terms of evaluation, there are 2 parts of evaluation that would like you to be mindful of. One is a test of the concept of your product or solution. 2 is usability, right? And you always test of your concept first, whether if the idea or the solution that I come up with, does it really resonate with the users? Does it really meet a real need or solve a real problem in the community? How does this solution fit the context that we are currently in? So get these things tested and sorted out first before we talk about usability, whether how easy is it to use this, how easy is the users able to access this, are people able to understand the solution that you have. So that would come second after you have sorted out and make sure that whatever that you have designed truly solves a problem. And when it comes to creating prototypes, we can create prototypes on different resolution level, from low resolution all the way to high resolution. Unfortunately, previously I've been involved in certain projects that we skipped all the way to create a high resolution prototype, only to discover that it doesn't achieve the outcomes that we want to see. If you see me in person, you can ask me about it. We definitely would like to advocate, start with a low resolution prototype. Right? Don't over invest your time in creating your app or website, your service before first testing it out right? Whether if it's something that truly brings value to people. However, over time, it is important for us to get towards a high resolution prototype. Reason being, if you are perpetually stuck in a low resolution, the type of feedbacks that you'll get will not be of a high quality because they know that this is not a real solution. It doesn't exist yet. So then they would then give you their impression of what they think it is. So over time, as you get more confident that, hey, it seems like the feedback that we're getting, it seems like it's going in the right way, build the next prototype at a mid resolution, moving towards higher resolution. And then when people realize, hey, this is truly a platform that exists, and the feedbacks and the quality of feedbacks that you get will get better. Okay, so if we would like to then prototype a service or a solution, what kind of prototype techniques can we choose to use? An easy one is a solution diagram. So to create a diagram that tells people what this solution is all about, I would generally say that this is something that is used to align your team members at the start. And as you go along, you might then build other prototypes, right? But as a start, as a way to bring something from a concept in your mind out onto something on the board, I think is something that is really powerful. In this case, the example over here is a bank was trying to solve a problem where they realized that very often their clients lose their credit cards. And then they go through lots of trouble trying to cancel the card when they're overseas. And how can we then perhaps be a first responder to our cardholders to say that, hey, we can be there for you and also prevent your card from getting lost. So they thought about why not create a smart band, something similar like what you might see in Disneyland today, where the smart band is also a credit card. So maybe I can then go around with this smart band and scan it in order to pay at different shops, to pay in a taxi. And at the same time, the smart band may then contain some of the details of the card holder, that in event of an emergency, they can then be the first person that responds in order to have a wonderful experience for the card holders. So just an idea that they have mapped out in a solution diagram, right? So this allows us to explore what's the ecosystem of different systems that might need to come together in order for this solution to be created. Another technique is to create a storyboard. A storyboard comes from the cinematic industry, right? So if I am a film producer and I would like to go out and pitch my film to potential investors, what they would do is to create a storyboard where they have got all the key scenes drawn out and a description of what a key scene might be. And with these key scenes, they will be able to walk investors through, right? This is the entire storyline, and these are the main pivotal moments throughout the story. So you can do the same thing for the service that you're trying to create. What are the key scenes of this future service that you're trying to enable the users with? So draw those things out and just walk out the door and get someone to give you some feedback. The important thing here is to concentrate on the key scenes where value is created for your users. How is that value being transacted? And with illustration, that it should make it a lot easier for people to understand rather than just telling them as writing it out in the form of text or trying to tell someone about it. Okay, so many services have physical and digital touch points. One technique that you could do is to prototype these experiences using paper. We can then reenact the entire service scenario using these paper props or observe our users as they go through these paper prototypes to see how do they interact, right, with these elements. For the example below, I was prototyping something for a utilities company. They have just recently installed a lot of smart digital monitors in people's homes, in the clients' homes. And they would like to explore with AR, with AI, what does that mean for the future? How can we help our customers to better understand the patterns of electricity usage in their own homes? Let's just quickly mock that up, and that can give us a concept on how can such technologies come into play. So it's quite fun. It's a little bit scrappy, but just like the video that you saw earlier, just prototyping it out in paper can give you quite a lot of insights as to how people interact with your physical or digital medium. And does it really fit the real world context? Will people want to use it? Will people behave the way that you think that they would? Right. So I think we should test those concepts out using paper prototyping. And if you would like to prototype a process or experience, especially through a space, you can consider doing something we call scenario desktop walkthrough. So the example below was when Singapore was building the cruise center. Now it's already opened down south, right? So before they built the Marina Bay Cruise Center, they wanted to understand how will people go through the entire cruise center when they arrive all the way until they board the ship. So by doing a desktop scenario walkthrough, they could then start to examine the flow of people. How would they come into the space? What would they be greeted by? What kind of services should there be? And how would they interact with these services? How would they then deposit their luggage and then get onto the ship? So what is the entire experience that we like to create for people? So imagine that if you're looking at a space, say at the void deck, and you would like to run a service there, perhaps consider something like this, right? How will people come in? What will they be greeted by? And how will the entire space and flow be organized? Remember we talked about personas before? And this is where you can then consider how will each persona go through this space layout? How will they experience this based on their needs and their motivations? So layer it on with the different things that we have talked about before. Role playing, or another way we call it, investigative rehearsals. It may seem really funny at the start for people who have not done it, but I promise you this would be one of the most powerful prototyping approaches if you are designing a service experience, right? It allows you to have a first person perspective on how it would be like to be at the front lines, to be engaging your customers. What will you say? How will you react? How should you react? So it's fully immersive, and it allows us to then put ourselves right into the roles of the service person that's delivering the service, or put ourselves in the shoes of our customer going through that experience. And with this kind of investigative rehearsals, we can then shape how we will greet people. How do we engage our users such that they receive the value that they should be receiving? Bearing in mind that when it comes down to service experiences, many a times it's the details that gives us that good experience. So what are the nitty-gritties here that we should be looking at in order to deliver a good experience? I think through investigative rehearsals, that's where we can examine services in depth. Next is spatial prototyping. You'll be surprised that actually humans are not very good at perceiving space. So if you want to mock up a space and test it out, if you're trying to design a service within a space, that might be a good idea to do. So previously was tasked to mock up an experience at a conference that is only given a 2 by 2 meter area. So just quickly mock that out on the floor and tell people that, hey guys, this is 2 by 2 meters. Because before that, they were imagining, oh, we're going to have a mirror cave that is greeted by different technologies and we will interact with it. Guys, you have 2 by 2 meters, and this is what we can play around with. Another example in spatial prototyping, 10 years ago or so, when CGH was designing its orthopedics clinic. You can go and visit their orthopedics clinic right now. You'll find that there are many folding chairs that's at the side so that caregivers can sit with their patient that's on a wheelchair. If you go to the counter, you'll notice there's this nice curve where the patients can put their clutches on. So a lot of that started through spatial prototyping when they were opening and considering what to build within that clinic. And for digital solutions, then as we go about creating our prototypes, then we can consider wireframes. So wireframes, I think that it start to step more towards usability, testing for usability, right? How should I order the information in my app so that people can understand it? What are the different routes that my user might take as they go through my website or my application? So use wireframes when you're examining or trying to prototype a digital solution, trying to understand what that digital interaction
might be. So if you look into Miro, you'll find that Miro has got very basic wireframe sets that you can already use to do some wireframe prototypes. But if you want to explore more, then you can look into InVision, Simic, Figma. So those are all some of the more popular platforms to use for wireframe prototyping. Of course, you don't have to stick to just one approach. So if you realize you can definitely do, say, investigative rehearsals with paper prototypes, you can in fact could use a wireframe at the same time while doing all these things. So mix up different approaches, look out for what are the advantages of each approach, and just bring that to the table. But most importantly is to bring these prototypes out and engage your users with them so that you get good feedbacks from them where you can then use their feedbacks to iterate upon the solution that you have. It's important for us, though, to be clear about the objective of each prototyping cycle that we do. Like I mentioned before, it's best to figure out, are we delivering something of value? Is our concept right? Before we go down to testing the nitty-gritty about user experience and whether they understand the whole flow of your journey clearly. So the usability aside should comes a bit later. Test your concept first. Last few tips on prototyping: go cheap, quick, and dirty. Don't invest so much in creating really good prototype, but only to realize that we have spent a lot of money on something that actually nobody wants. With that, right, if you're cheap, quick, and dirty, you can then improve through iterations. Every time we go out with a prototype, we get more feedbacks, we understand more, we come back in again, and we do the next prototype that's of a slightly higher resolution. It's a good idea to test where your product will be used. So when we used to do this in the hospitals, for example, if it's going to be used in the wards, you better test it out over there because the entire context is different. So later I'll also share another case study. If you're trying to pilot something within people's homes, then you should definitely test this platform out in people's homes because that's where you'll learn a lot more of how this will be used. If you're going into the testing for usability prototypes already, then it's a really good idea to not explain so much and just observe. It's important for us to remember that we're not salespeople. We're not here to convince the user with our prototypes that this is the best solution that you should use. No, actually what we're trying to do here is trying to break the solutions that we have created. We're trying to see if it fails, and if it fails, we learn something from that, and from the learning, we can iterate something that's even better. Okay, so don't fall in love with the solutions that you have created. We are trying to go out and see if we can break them. And when possible, co-design with your users, right? Bring your users in, discuss with them, and design the entire process of your service together with your users so that we can inbuild their views and their needs right from the get-go. That might save us quite a bit of time. As Thomas Edison would put it, is I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that the things won't work. And from each of these 10,000 ways, I understand a little bit more about the people I'm trying to design for. I understand a little bit more about what's feasible and what's not feasible, and how better for us to design our solution the next time around.
We wanted to improve health outcomes of socially isolated seniors. To do this, we created Alexa, enabled Alexa with a software that allows us to input information into Alexa that engages the seniors living alone, to remind them about their appointments, about their medication, and allow social workers and hospital personnel to engage these seniors living alone. So to do this, we had co-creation workshops where we brought the seniors together and brought our prototypes to the table and just try to elicit some feedback from this focus group. Our initial assumption was that seniors would desire a device at home that might help them, right? To tell the time, to tell the weather, to tell you what's happening today. But when seniors heard about that, it was, no, I'm not really keen on having something like that. I have the clock on the wall to tell me the time. I can look out the window and I'll know what the weather is. So what's the point of having something like that at home? And it was about appointments and things like that. They weren't that keen. It's only when they heard that, oh, if I fall down and I call Alexa for help, will Alexa be able to help me? And they realized that yes, Alexa will be able to call for help. And that's where we got their buy-in. So we'll talk more about value proposition in our next video. So if we can get our value proposition out clearly, that's where we'll be able to get buy-in from our users. So from this, I think it helps us to also polish up and understand which function and features of our solution truly brings value to the person that we're trying to help. In this case, the seniors living alone. And initially we thought that, oh, the seniors will probably want something to look nice and not like a round black thing that's sitting on their table. So could it would be like a soft toy or some kind of vase or something like that. But once the seniors understood that this Alexa will help me to call for help when I need help, they didn't want anything to be covering Alexa and stopping Alexa from doing the work it's supposed to do. Again, another perspective that we learned engaging the seniors. Some other things that we learned was where should this device be placed as we were going to the seniors' homes? Should it be placed in the kitchen? Should it be placed in the living room? So I think there's a whole different dimension of things that we started to learn once we are implementing it in people's homes, right? And over time, you also realize that seniors will not know what else to ask Alexa and not know what to engage Alexa with. So what we did was then as a design iteration, was to enable crowdsourced positive messages to be sent to the seniors through the Silver Bowl initiative, right? So then that gives a senior a reason for them to interact with Alexa a bit more. Happy to say that at the end of our little pilot study, the seniors were a bit sad that we had to take Alexa away. So they do miss having this little buddy at home, I guess.
Okay, so now that you've known some prototyping techniques, I hope that all the teams will spend at least the next 2 weeks creating prototypes and testing them with your users or with stakeholders. And hopefully with their feedbacks, you'll be able to design a solution that resonates with their needs and create a greater impact for them. On 14th of April, we shall be introducing theory of change and value proposition. So these frameworks can help you better connect the dots between your solution and the outcomes you want to see, as well as how is a best way for us to communicate what's the value to different stakeholders and users. Then on, we have another 2 weeks to prepare for the pitch team selection. So that's going to happen on 28th of April. And from then on, selected teams will be then preparing for the Design4Impact community and pitch day on 19th of May. So we shall be talking a little bit more about this in this video. So on 28th of April, what do we need you to submit in order to position yourself as a candidate to be selected for the pitch and the community event? First is to introduce yourselves, right? Tell us about your team, who are your members, where they come from, and what makes you different. Tell us a little bit about your design challenge. What's the challenge that you're specifically working on? Yes, we're all looking at vulnerable families, but what aspects of it? And remember that initially when we signed up, there is also a challenge team that you signed up for that could have originally been education, finance, or health. But along the way, you might have changed, or along the way, you realize that perhaps your solution covers more grounds than what it initially does. So let us know, what is that challenge team that your solution predominantly focus on? On top of your team introduction, we would like all teams to write a cover story from the year 2026. So imagine that it is already the year 2026 and you have gone out and implemented your solution in the community. What does it look like? What does success look like to you? How have you gotten to where you are in 2026? How did you implement your solution? Imagine that if you have been approached by a journalist and would like to understand more about what you have done, what would they have written about your solution? So in this very quick article, you can imagine it to be like a news article or a magazine article, concisely tell us what this solution is all about and what impact it has created. But being mindful, we don't have a lot of time, so there's many teams that we need to read. Please be concise and keep it as short as you can. Some other details that you should include within this cover story would be to explain clearly who is this target population that you're working to help. What's the challenge? What's the urgent needs that you're trying to solve? What's the value that your solution brings to these people? How did your solution resolve the challenge that they face? The impact that their solution has created. What's the scale of the impact? And maybe explain a little bit of how is this solution different from what already exists? What makes it unique? What makes it different? Why is it something that we should focus on? Some other tips for your cover story would be assume that the audience have no idea about your challenge. So you have to give an explanation to why these vulnerable families face these challenges and what are the contexts behind it. So all the details from your research can be surfaced here. It should connect the dots between the users, their needs, the insights that you have found about them during your research, and the solution that create that impact, right? Connect the different pieces of information together. That should be quite clearly written inside this article. It will be a bonus if you're able to describe how did you get to where you are, how do you develop, how do you implement the solution. So that gives us an idea that you have actually thought through it, what's actually required to implement something like this in the community. And once again, clarity, not quantity. Keep things as short as possible, as succinct as you can, but clearly delivering the points because we do have quite a bit to go through. Yeah. You can also submit other documents on top of this cover story to substantiate what you have done. So if you already have a pitch deck, share that with us. If you have done a prototype, you can take a video of it, or you can mock it up as a drawing, or write out the process flow, or all of the above as supplementary content so that we'll be able to better understand the journey that you've gone through, the effort that you've put in, and the concept behind your solution. We shall be sharing some past examples of these posters on the community board, but we'll only put this up a little bit later on 14th of April so that they do not steer your thinking, right? So we want to give you ample room and space to come up with your own solutions first. So how are we going to select the teams that progress towards the pitch event or the community event? Is to follow the pitch criteria. So this has already been shared on our website, but just to give a quick account of what these criteria are. So first we have solution fit, right? How well what you have developed fit the needs of the people that you're trying to serve, right? Does it fit the context they're in? Does it fit the Singapore circumstance that these vulnerable families are in? Number two would be how innovative your solution is. Is it a new concept, a new approach to tackle the challenge at hand? Third would be feasibility and scalability. How easy is it to implement something like this? How scalable is it? Is it really ready to be implemented tomorrow? Then we'll also look at how the teams have presented your ideas, right? Because that would allow us to know how clear you are about the solution at hand. So we'll be looking at how you present it. And last but not least, application of design thinking. How much have you applied to understand the needs of your users, to empathize with them, to understand their deep needs before designing a solution? So go through different design thinking principles and try to apply them to the solution. With the criteria shared in the previous slide and the materials submitted, the organizers shall be selecting teams to participate in the Design4Impact 3 pitch events and the community events. Teams that are selected for the pitch event shall be presenting to a panel of judges, and they would stand to win 10K seed funding for up to 1 year to pilot the solution. They will also be receiving support from organizers to incubate their solution. And for the Design4Impact community event, will be an opportunity for all the teams to showcase your solution to the Design4Impact ecosystem. So that would be to funders, implementation partners, technical partners, different health and social agencies, and perhaps also find potential new members for a current pilot. The whole idea is to forge collaborations between different entities so that you could go out and implement your solution regardless if you're win the pitch or you don't. More information with regards to the pitch event and the community events will be released in due time. But okay, so back to what's more important at hand right now. What needs to be done by 14th of March is to design your solutions, to create your prototype, and to head out and start to speak with your users again, to stakeholders again, to test the solution with them. Try to get an understanding if this your solution is indeed something that would benefit them and how would they think the solution should be, right? So get some feedbacks, get your solutions iterated based on their feedbacks, and hopefully will land at an impactful solution that can go on to the pitch or go on to the community event to be shared with others. With that, that's the end of this video. All the best to your prototyping journey.